Broadcasting live from an undisclosed location. This is the TCMMA podcast with your host, Chris Cross.
Whoa!
Dana White privilege.
Let's go, baby! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go! Let's go, baby!
Dana White privilege. Privilege. Privilege.
Yeah, buddy. Let's go. Let's get it on. Usually when I'm searching the UFC news for topics, see what's going on, I'm looking for Khamzat news, Islam news, Conor McGregor news, one of these guys fighting. Seems like they don't fight enough right now. None of that. None of that. All three are fighting in June. I mean, it's sick. It's absolutely crazy to think that all these guys are fighting in June.
Khamzat Chimaev!
Yep. UFC Saudi Arabia. Islam Makhachev, UFC 302 against Poirier. Conor McGregor, UFC 303 against Michael Chandler. All these things are happening. And it's going to be a great month. I can't wait. So as we dive into some of the headlines, and we'll circle back, we got Maycee Barber versus Rose Namajunas. I like this one. Looking at UFC Fight Night headliner on July 13th. And that's a big one. The women don't often get enough respect, but that's going to be a big fight right there. And two fighters I really like. It makes a prediction very, very tough every time that happens. Dana White says UFC card at Sphere will be one and done. Nobody will ever be able to pull this off again. Not that you can't have a fight at the Sphere, but not at the level that the UFC is preparing to do so at UFC 306. Conor McGregor's UFC 303 return breaks record, becomes highest gate in company history. This fight is not for over a month, and it's already over like 18 mil. That's like $1,000 per seat on average. That's crazy. So for an average seat, $1,000. Maybe if you get a nosebleed, it might be, $600, $700. You want to sit in the first 10 rows, is going to be a couple thousand. I mean, it's wild. Ian Gary reveals new fight offer is on the table. No longer waiting on Colby Covington, which I could have told Ian Gary that. That's the mistake he made, calling out Covington for a month, thinking that Covington is actually going to fight. It's not going to happen. In fact, in another story, Colby Covington targets a legacy fight against former UFC title holder. Let's see if you're all talk. We'll get into that. Khamzat Chimaev's setback will force Dana White to hand Robert Whittaker a title shot, claims former UFC champ. Interesting. Gilbert Burns responds to Joaquin Buckley's call out after UFC Fight Night St. Louis win, where he also called out Conor McGregor, who's already got a fight. That's not happening. Burns says, let's do it. Yeah. Jake Paul, Mike Tyson boxing match odds. Paul remains slight favorite. And the key there is slight favorite. Why is he a slight favorite? Why is he not 2-1 like he started out? We'll explain. So circling back to the top, you got Maycee Barber versus Rose Namajunas. This is a big fight in the women's flyweight division, right? Rose Namajunas has gone up. She's looking well in the division. Maycee Barber is a staple. She's very, very good. And that's going to be a highly interesting and intriguing fight there. The former women's strawweight champion taking on a big, strong, powerful, and winner in Maycee Barber. Which way is that thing going to go? Can Thug Rose get the job done? I don't know. And I also want to know who else is going to be on that card, because they're going to have to beef it up in the co-main event. Because for some reason, when the women headline, you don't get a lot of people tuning in. I don't know why. I don't know why that's the case, but that's the way it usually happens. Not a lot of people turning in for the women. Maybe because it's a male-dominated viewership. That might have something to do with it. But people are still going to watch. I'll be watching. I'll be right in the mix and live for that fight like always. Dana White says UFC card at the Sphere will be one and done. Nobody will ever be able to pull this off again. And it's highly likely. I mean, the UFC according to Dana White, is spending so much money on this event. And it's just built differently, right? It's not like the standard arena, right? It's a sphere. So you got video all around the place. I mean, so when it's just even from the fighter's perspective, I mean, how's that going to be? It's like they look up and are you going to see just one big video of the whole place? Are you going to be able to be on your back and look up and see yourself on the back straight above you? It's going to be on all sides of you. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how this thing transpires. It's going to be a big deal. I'm sure Joe Rogan and the commentators will be talking about it throughout the night. And yeah, one and done. The UFC's got to be the first to do it and the biggest to do it. And then you leave it alone after that. And he also went on to say that they're going to be getting out of the Apex, right? We got UFC Vegas 92 on deck this Saturday night. And you think about that, in 4 years, we're at the 92nd edition of the Apex Center with limited fans. And people are getting past the point where they want to see this stuff. Of course, we're still going to tune in and watch the fights, but it's eerily quiet compared to other events. And it's about that time where, 4 years, not past this thing, maybe 2.5 years past the pandemic, but now it's time to move on and start getting into more crowds. And they've slowly done that, but now it's time to make the leap and go full time once again. It's just been too convenient to sit at the Apex Center, but people, and I know when I watch, I want to see the crowd. The crowd gets me energized. The crowd is loud. Every time there's a big punch or takedown, you hear the place roaring. Cameras are shaking, etc. And that's what we want. We want to feel intertwined with the crowd, who gives us the energy from inside to love the sport, just like any other sport. Just like when a football player scores a touchdown. Can you imagine scoring a touchdown with no fans? Not the same. So that's the direction the UFC is going to go. Now, speaking of one and done, Conor McGregor, UFC 303 return versus Michael Chandler, breaks record, becomes highest gate in company history. And, I'm thinking about this thing. It's over 18, roughly 20 million, right? You're looking at 18 to 20,000 seats. So that's about $1,000 average per ticket. That's absolutely wild. And the UFC has come close to those numbers before, but to break the all-time record a month before the fight is even here is simply crazy. I mean, people are giving up that type of money to wait for a month to see the return of Conor McGregor, who's not even anywhere close to title contention. Two guys fighting in a weight class of which they'll probably never fight for a title. And it's still breaking records. And see, that's what Conor McGregor does. That's why he's always talking about different ventures, like he's in the movies now. He wants to go back to boxing, fight this guy, that guy, right? He doesn't have any aspirations, it doesn't seem like, on the surface, to win a title. He just wants these big-time fights. And if he loses to Michael Chandler, it won't drop his legacy at all. The dude is a multimillionaire. But it will drop his future endeavors from ever being in title contention or even thinking that he could be, to just taking big fights and fighting once every 2 or 3 years for the next 6 to 8 years, and then he'll ride off into the sunset and probably be an actor for the rest of his life or have different business ventures. And that's why I really want to see him win, because I still want to see him move up and face a Joaquin Buckley or face someone that can move him in the right direction to get a title shot. But who knows if he's even capable of doing that or ever coming close again. We're going to find out. Last time he had a break like this, he finished Donald the Cowboy Cerrone in 40 seconds. So we'll see. Michael Chandler is not Donald Cerrone, though. He's much better in terms of what he's going to offer McGregor, and very well has the ability to KO McGregor. And I'm not talking like a Dustin Poirier KO, which was, over a few seconds. I'm talking like a one punch or one kick finish, which would be wild because we've never seen that happen to McGregor. We've seen him tap against Khabib, right? That was 4 rounds in. We saw him go down to Dustin Poirier, and you could argue that those were injury related, but the bottom line is we've never really seen McGregor finished on one punch or kick, and that's very possible. against Michael Chandler. We'll have to wait and see. Ian Gary reveals new fight offers on the table as he moves on from Colby Covington. That was a waste of time. We told you it was a waste of time while it was going on. And now it's time for Ian Gary to look forward. And who's he looking at? Michael Venom Page. Ian Gary telling Talk Sport MMA, I'm sick of this ranking stuff. I'm in a position where everyone above me is injured, and then Leon Edwards and Bilal are facing off against each other. So, he doesn't seem interested in trying to get Colby to fight, but instead he's going to go look for Michael Venom Page to take this fight on short notice. And I don't know that Venom Page is going to do that. I don't know that Ian Gary is going to get a fight unless it's against a very low-level opponent, someone that might not even be ranked or very low in the rankings. It'd be a big opportunity for Venom Page. But the bottom line is, does he really want to take this opportunity on short notice? I say no, he's not going to. I just don't see it happening. Ian Gary goes on to say, I have no interest in fighting anyone below me, but I'm kind of in a position where I have no choice other than to wait. And the last thing I want to do is wait. Anyone that is willing to stand across the octagon from me on June 29th can get their butt whooped. And Michael Venom Page's management and himself are kind of concerned with the time frame, right? But Ian Gary wants to be on Colby Covington's card. That's the bottom line. He's got to be on that card. And he'll fight anyone to make it happen. On the other hand, on the flip side, Colby Covington targets a legacy fight against a former UFC title holder who goes by the name of Do Bronx, a.k.a. Charles Oliveira, who lost his last fight and has now lost to Sarukian and Makhachev, and maybe eyeing a move to the welterweight division, where he can beef up and kind of get a new fresh start, which is not a bad idea. I mean, really, if I'm Oliveira, I'm jumping all over this. These are two guys that I really like, that I can just sit back and watch, and one of them will rise to the top. I'm not big on Colby Covington not fighting Ian Gary, but if he's going to hold out, Oliveira will be a good fight. And, this is a fight that obviously Colby thinks he can win. These are the fights that Colby takes. It won't be against a true welterweight, but then if he wins, he can claim, hey, he beat a top prospect that isn't really a prospect, and then try to wiggle his way into another title fight. But if Oliveira wins, he gets a fresh start and possibly a great matchup against Leon Edwards, to be honest. And if I'm Oliveira, I'm jumping all over this, man. All over it. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But I like that potential call out by Colby to fight Do Bronx. I love it. Khamzat Chimaev's setback will force Dana White to hand Robert Whittaker a title shot. Now, it's very hard for me to entertain the fact that Khamzat could lose a fight, right? It's hard for me to entertain that. But just for a second, if Robert Whittaker does beat Khamzat, I don't care what anyone says, he deserves a title shot. Now, they'll downplay it and say, oh, Khamzat wasn't that good. He was overrated. He was all hype. He didn't look good in his last two fights before the fight you beat him in. And that's the way it will go, and they'll make him fight a Sean Strickland or someone like that. But the reality is, right now, facing an undefeated opponent who many believe, including myself, that will be a former champ, if you stop that hype train, then yes, you should get a title shot. That's not the way it will turn out, but you should. Meanwhile, you got Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa fighting. If Paulo Costa can somehow beat Sean Strickland, that will just part the ways for both Khamzat or Robert Whittaker, whoever wins that fight, which will happen first, right? Or actually, no, Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa are fighting at UFC 302. So that's actually going to happen first before Khamzat. But nonetheless, once that fight ends, it'll give us a better idea of, Khamzat and Robert Whittaker, what will happen here. Now, if Sean Strickland wins, and it really doesn't matter which fight is before the other, but Sean Strickland will fight first. But let's say Sean Strickland wins and Khamzat wins. They got to fight each other. Even though Sean Strickland will be sitting back waiting on Duplessis to fight. and then calling for a rematch immediately, regardless of who wins, right? Because if Adesanya wins, he beat Adesanya. If Duplessis wins, he can say, hey, that was a very close fight that some people argue that I won. So, that Khamzat gets put on the back burner. So if you're a Khamzat fan like myself, you almost got to be rooting for Paulo Costa, which really stinks. Because I like Sean Strickland. And quite frankly, I don't see Paulo Costa winning that fight. But there's a lot on the line here by the time Khamzat and Robert Whittaker throw down. But you know me. I got Khamzat winning this fight. I think he's tired of hearing, hey, you struggled in the last 2 fights, right? You had to go down and wait to fight Burns. You didn't look great, but won. Epic third round that could have gone either way, to be completely honest with you. Then you get Kamaru Usman, a fighter that you did not expect to fight, right? You expect a striker in Paulo Costa who's got to pull out, and now you got to face Kamaru Usman who can go to the ground. And what does Khamzat do? He takes him down and controls him for the whole first round. In my opinion, these weren't bad fights. These were good fights. And, before these fights were scheduled, everybody was saying, no, he hasn't fought anyone yet. He fought Gilbert Burns and Kamaru Usman. And even after those wins, everyone's finding all the negative about it. I look at it and say, hey, he needed some of those fights to humble himself, to force him to go back into training and take it really serious. Not that he doesn't already, but in his mind now knows, one of these guys can catch me if I don't go in there ready to go. And therefore, Khamzat is going to be better than ever in his next fight, which happens to be Robert Whittaker, the Reaper. He's no joke. Capable of beating Khamzat. Let's be real. Capable of beating anyone on the planet on any given day. And Khamzat's got to go in there and flatten him. That's the bottom line. Gilbert Burns responds to Joaquin Buckley call out after UFC Fight Night St. Louis win. Burns saying, let's do it. The way I see it, I'm not in a situation to call anyone out or to pick and choose. I don't know if they send me the fight, but if they do, I'll say yes. And that's Gilbert Burns style. And these guys, I had a lot to say about Usman, Gilbert Burns. I'm not the biggest fan, but I recognize he's a great fighter. But when these guys fight Khamzat and step into the octagon against them, even Robert Whittaker now, I'm a fan for life. Because there's not a lot of guys willing to do it. There's a lot of guys willing to do this, to talk, but not a lot of guys willing to step in there against Khamzat. And Gilbert Burns did, and looked darn good in that fight. And he certainly has my respect, and hopefully he has yours. But him in that situation against Joaquin Buckley would be awesome to see, and a big opportunity for Buckley. One he probably doesn't win, but hey, you never know. Now, I've been telling you, against the advice of all of you, that Jake Paul is going to beat Mike Tyson. And oddly enough, he still remains a slight favorite. Why is this thing down from 180 to 135, 140, 150, whatever it may be? Because of the rules. One of the reasons I think Mike Tyson loses is because he gets tired later in the fight. Right? So you have to first assume that Jake Paul is going to get through the first 2 or 3 rounds. Then by round 4, Mike Tyson really starts to look tired. By round 7 and 8, he's gassed. Completely gassed. He's 58 years old. But they have leveled the playing field, right? As we all know. 2-minute rounds, 8 rounds. That's 16 minutes. That's a regular 5-round fight. If they were 3 minutes, you'd see a big drop-off in round 4 and 5 by Mike Tyson. But where they're 2 minutes and you get to rest quicker, instead of waiting 3 minutes, you rest after 2. Mike Tyson's going to be pretty fresh throughout this fight. I mean, these rounds are going to be quick, man. Boom, boom, boom. Mike Tyson's going to be able to rest. He'll get into round 5 and 6, if it goes that far, and start saying, oh my gosh, there's only 7 or 8 minutes left in his fight, and he'll be fine. And therefore, the odds are coming down. And in fact, in my head, I'm like, is Jake Paul really going to win in this situation? If it's an 8-round fight for 3 minutes, Jake Paul wins, in my book, pretty darn easily, as long as he doesn't get KO'd in the first or second. And I put that disclaimer out there because it's possible. I mean, Mike Tyson can KO anyone on the planet, including the heavyweight champ right now, in the first round or 2. But if you get past that, you have a strong chance to win. But the game has changed now. The game has changed based on the rules. And to me, anything can happen in this fight. And I don't see Mike Tyson getting as tired, but I still think Jake Paul is going to pull this thing out. I just do. I just think Jake Paul is going to pull this thing out. And, you know, and it won't even be close, because if it goes to a decision, Jake Paul's winning. It's still, the big question remains, can Mike Tyson KO Jake Paul? And I think all the way up through, instead of saying round 1, 2, and maybe 3, you got to say now rounds 1 through 5, which is basically 3 rounds, 10 minutes. Mike Tyson has the ability to KO Jake Paul. That lasts now longer into the fight, and that's more scary. But I think Jake Paul outboxes him. He's going to touch Tyson more. Tyson's going to try to get inside, land the big punches, then tie up. And as time goes on, every second, the percentage of Jake Paul, at the beginning of the fight, it's like Jake Paul has a 10% chance to win. After the first minute, it's up to 25%. After round 2, it's up to 40%. After rounds 3 and 4, it's 60%. After round 5, it's like 80%, right? But when that bell dings at the beginning of the fight, it's like, okay, Jake Paul has like 2% chance to win this fight. Because Mike Tyson can KO anybody on the planet if he catches him. I don't care if he's 58 or 108. That's just the way it goes. But I still like Jake Paul to barely win. I agree with the odds coming way down. It's getting closer and closer to 50-50. And quite frankly, as we get closer to the fight, it's going to continue heading in that direction. That's just what I believe. And rightfully so, because no one really knows till what happens. And that's the way it is. But, all I know is Jake Paul got in there with a real boxer and nearly won. And is Mike Tyson, if he got in there with that real boxer right now, would he be able to hang at 58? I don't know. Because I think the boxing is over. It's just all about the KO. Can he land the KO? We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But listen, that's going to do it, man. Looking forward to this Saturday night. Got some big fights coming up at UFC Vegas 92. So we'll be back in short order. Hope you enjoy the rest of your day. This your boy Chris Cross. Hope you have a good one. And God bless as always. Peace.